time for us to have a conversation on the health segment. And then this morning, we have Dr. Kelvin Owusu, who has joined us on the show this morning. We're going to be talking about a very, very important subject. But before we get into that, a quick reminder that My GH Pay is back, and My GH Pay, the Ghana's biggest online payments collections platform. Now you kindly go over to myghpay.com and fill in some information on the website, and you are good to go. Otherwise, you can also go to Play Store or App Store and you download from there, put in your information, and you're good to go. My GH Pay, buy, sell, connect. Now, dementia is the conversation. Let's find out what it's all about. What is dementia in the first place, and who suffers from it? Are you in danger? Well, if you have any questions, kindly send us. The number is 0550-585832. We want to hear from you. Good morning, Dr. Kelvin Owusu.
Good morning, David.
How are you doing?
I'm very well.
Fantastic. What is dementia?
Well, dementia is a syndrome. It's a collection of a lot of different things. So it's kind of like saying heart disease.
Okay.
It's not one thing. It's a lot of things that have come together. You know, so basically, it's a syndrome made up of memory loss, reduced capacity for thinking, loss of function. I'm talking about physical activity, loss of function. You know, so previously you were able to button your own shirts, but now you can't button that shirt anymore. Previously you were able to bath yourself. Now you don't even remember how to bath yourself. You know, so it's a collection of these symptoms and diseases that have come together to be called dementia. So there are various other diseases that all come under the umbrella of dementia. Okay.
Now, I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but years ago, when I heard the word dementia, my mind went to the English word demented.
Yes.
Okay. Now, automatically you're thinking, okay, the person is mad. But from what you're describing, dementia is not demented.
Thankfully, there's nothing like madness in medicine. Nobody is mad.
So explain to us where are we? How come we've got these intriguing correlations going on here?
I mean, there's a societal definition, and there's actually the medical definition. So yes, sometimes people who have dementia behave abnormally. Okay. You know, because I mean, if you are talking to this person about let's say you're talking about your family, and he's talking about work, you know, and it's like he can't understand, he cannot understand what you are saying, and his or her responses are opposite to actually what you are talking about. I mean, it seems to the typical person that this person is crazy. You know, so that's where the idea came from. You know, I mean, the dementia it comes from the English word demented. I mean, they have the same roots, so it's understandable that people would make that association. But dementia is not madness, even though they are also treated by psychiatrists and neurologists. And at this point, I must say that I'm neither a psychiatrist nor a neurologist. I'm a general practitioner. But I mean, dementia tends to be a diagnosis of exclusion. What I mean is that before you can diagnose somebody as having dementia of whichever type of dementia, be it Alzheimer's, be it vascular, be it whatever, we need to eliminate all other possible causes. Because if somebody goes to smoke weed, and the person is high and forgets who he is and is misbehaving, you cannot call that person, you cannot say that person has dementia, because if you remove the weed from the system,
that has created
exactly, if you remove the precipitating factor, that person will return to normal behavior. I mean, so there are diseases that can present with dementia. So depression is actually one common disease that can present with memory issues, can affect the person's thinking, can affect the person's ability to perform their normal functions. So their cognition is at stake. So you have to rule out depression before you can make a diagnosis of dementia. Some drugs, I've already mentioned weed, some drugs can also affect people's thinking, especially the psychoactive drugs. Drugs that are used to manage depression or anxiety, some of these drugs can also affect people's thinking. So you have to make sure this person is not taking any of these medications. Diseases like hypertension, diabetes can to an extent affect the brain as well. If somebody has had a stroke, stroke can actually lead to dementia, which is called vascular dementia, which I mentioned earlier, because basically it's a disease affecting the brain. A stroke means that the blood is not getting to a certain part of the brain. So if that part of the brain is responsible for memory, you're going to have memory issues. You know, so you're going to have dementia as a result of something. You know, and so if you're able to, if for example the stroke is detected early enough, you're able to intervene and resolve the stroke, then the memory function will be restored. And so then that person no longer has dementia. And so it's a diagnosis of exclusion. We need to rule out every other thing before we settle on dementia of whichever etiology.
Okay, so I guess the question that comes to mind then is, of course, you've explained that, you know, there are certain things that can cause dementia. Give us a general overview. Can it also, is it hereditary? Are some people predisposed to it? What can people do if, let's say, it's not in your family, to make sure you never get it?
Okay, so first of all, dementia is associated with age. And this is a bit confusing. It's associated with age, but it's not characteristic of age. Yes, I did say it's a bit confusing. Because, and here's the thing. About 1 in 20 people above the age of 65 will have some level of dementia, and there are various stages. There's stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. Stage 3 is the severest form. So 1 in 20 people above 65 will have some level of dementia. 1 in 6 above 80 will have dementia. So this shows that the older you grow, the more likely you are to get some degree of dementia. Now, you mentioned that it's hereditary. Yes, it's hereditary. In fact, there's a racial component. It's known that people of Southeastern Asia have a high incidence of dementia. And guess who is next?
Who?
People of African descent.
Really?
So yes, dementia is more common amongst us than the other races. Now, this could be because hypertension is high amongst us, the people of African descent. And I already mentioned there's an association between dementia and stroke. And there's a connection between stroke and hypertension. So that chain is there. So people of African descent tend to have a higher incidence of dementia. Type 2 diabetes also predisposes you to dementia. You know, so again, these are some of the risk factors.
But these are lifestyle illnesses.
I was going to say that, and but even before even coming with that question, people who smoke tend to have a higher incidence of dementia. Heavy alcohol drinking also predisposes you to dementia. So yes, there's a genetic or hereditary component, there's an environmental component, there's a lifestyle component in all of these things. You know, so yes, we are all at risk of dementia to an extent by our race, by where we live, because indeed, and this I found interesting, people living in low to middle income communities are at a higher risk of dementia. So you have to be rich to avoid dementia. That's what they are saying.
I think I understand. I can probably see why, though. But then, tell us, what seems to be the correlation there?
So these are not things that we can explain. It's statistics, association. I mean, it seems that if you took a sample of people, you realize that most of those who have dementia have the characteristics I mentioned about. They probably come from a low to middle income community. They probably have had terrible hypertension or diabetes. They were probably smoking. You know, they probably had a family member who had dementia. So these are associations. These are risk factors. Some of them are modifiable. When we say modifiable, it means that there are things that you can do something about. So for instance, if you're a smoker, you can stop. It's within your power to stop smoking, which will then reduce your risk. If you are drinking alcohol heavily, it is within your power to reduce it. So those are the modifiable risk factors. It's also known that people who are not active, so obese people, people who are sedentary, are also at a higher risk. And this is probably because obesity is linked to type 2 and then hypertension, which then eventually will result in the dementia. So if you modify your lifestyle, your risk of dementia also drops down. And then the final one is that people who do not, now I need to choose my words carefully, people who don't use their brain capacity a lot also are at higher risk. In other words, if you do not
exercise your brain.
If you don't exercise your brain, you tend to develop dementia earlier. You know, so you are not reading, or you are not learning, or you are not teaching, you are not engaging your mind, and you are not being social. People who are isolated tend to have dementia earlier than people who are in a community. People who, when I say you're in a community, I mean you involve yourself in community activities, whether it's church, communal labor, any of these things. It helps deal with dementia. Okay,
so I want to ask our viewers to send in messages. Quickly give us the symptoms of dementia, and then we'll ask them to send questions.
Some of the earlier symptoms of dementia are usually missed because we consider them normal. Forgetfulness. It's actually one of the earlier symptoms of dementia. So you know, somebody who was always mentally sharp, and as they are growing older, now they forget their name, or they forget their grandson's name, or their grandson's birthday. Previously they will be the ones to remind you, but now suddenly they themselves have forgotten. Or the person puts his I
have a friend in this building who's having that problem. Kwame Dazi has been forgetting his children's names.
No, but Kwame is too young for dementia. Let's spare him that for now. It's another issue. So, I mean, forgetfulness is one of the earliest symptoms of dementia. But like I said, many of us don't take it seriously. Then it progresses to other forms of memory challenges. You know, so the person actually is in the house, but does not remember that he's in his house. He doesn't remember where the bedroom is, or doesn't remember where the toilet is. You know, or the person goes to the toilet and doesn't remember how to clean himself or herself. You know, because the cognition is declining. So these are it starts very slowly and progresses to stage 2, then stage 3, where they are totally dependent. They cannot live on their own. So somebody has to be there to remind them that eat your food, or even feed them, because some of them may have forgotten even how to feed themselves. You know, so that's how debilitating it can become. You know, so that's why oftentimes you realize that, I mean, our grandparents who were highly functional, it gets to a point, and then they are so dependent, they are like babies. That's dementia right there. You know.
All right, so the number is 05505885832. If you happen to be outside Ghana, kindly prefix that number with +233. The hashtag is Breakfast Daily. Do send in your questions if it's something that you want to ask Doc about. What do you do when somebody's in that situation, and so on and so forth. We do have a question though from Facebook. This is coming from Dominic. Dominic says, is dementia hereditary? I guess I asked that question earlier. What causes it? Is it preventable? How will you treat it?
So in terms of the causes of dementia, now, you know, the reason why it's associated with age is that as you grow older, your body's repair mechanism slows down. I mean, generally there's a slowdown in everything, and that is why you're growing old. You know, so in the same way your skin begins to wrinkle because the system that would keep your skin fresh is failing. It's the same way the system that would keep your brain sharp is also failing, and so it's not able to replenish the brain cells as it would, you know, normally. The synapses are not firing as they used to do, and so that's why you're not as sharp, you're not as fast, you're not as quick thinking as you used to be, and especially if you have not been exercising those parts, because you could be old and still have your muscles intact because you still visit the gym, you still go jogging. In the same way, you need to exercise your brain as well to try and slow down the development of dementia. So if you're not doing these things, you are likely to experience it at an earlier age. You know, and so it's basically wear and tear in the brain cells that predisposes you to dementia. But of course, this pretty much describes Alzheimer's, which is the commonest form of dementia. About 60 to 80% of dementia is caused by Alzheimer's. But there are other causes of dementia, like I mentioned, vascular. So somebody who has hypertension poorly controlled can develop a stroke, which can affect the portions of the brain that are responsible for the functions we mentioned: memory, thinking, you know, what's it called?
Movement.
Yes, and all the coordination activities. Now, if these parts are affected, you will get dementia, but there's a specific cause for this dementia. Unfortunately, stroke, once it's established, you can't do anything about it. When I say established, I mean that if a stroke is happening, let me start from here. Stroke means that the blood supply to a portion of the brain has been cut off. Could be by a clot, or could be because the blood vessel has exploded because of hypertension. So now, if the obstruction is from a clot, if you actually catch it early, you can dissolve this clot so that the blood supply is restored. If you do this early enough, the stroke will not be established.
Oh, okay.
In which case, it would have been a transient, ischemic attack.
Yeah, okay.
Sometimes this dislodgement of the clot can happen by the body's own normal functions, or has to be a medical intervention. Yeah. Either way, if it doesn't establish, then the stroke will disappear. Okay. In which case, if you had memory issues during the phase when the obstruction was there, once the obstruction is removed, your memory is restored. But if the stroke is established and that stroke affected the memory centers, then you're going to have that problem for the rest of your life. If the stroke affected the portion of your brain that controls your hand or the right side of your body, you cannot have that function returning ever again, or it will not return 100%. Okay. And so these are the ones that we can actually control. We can actually do something about. Unfortunately, in our setup, we are not able to catch the strokes fast enough because our education about stroke is limited, and the resources available to intervene are also limited. But elsewhere, they're able to do a lot about stroke. I mean, I have actually witnessed a patient who was developing a stroke and was actually wheeled into theater, and they passed a catheter and actually dislodged the clot. And so it's happening elsewhere. We will get there eventually. I mean, and we should speed up if possible.
Okay, so there's a question here. It's coming from Mavis in Tema. Mavis, thank you for sending in the question. Tema coming to 6. She's asking, so I tested positive with COVID-19 last year, and since then, I've started forgetting things, just like that. What does this mean? What could this mean?
Yes, now this COVID-19, there are a lot of sequelae, there are a lot of complications of COVID-19 that, I mean, we are still not too clear the full extent of the after effects of COVID-19. Yeah. Yes, and so I mean, I may not be able to give you a specific answer right now. What I'll say is that I mean, once you have noticed that this is the issue you are dealing with, you should read about it. How do you handle forgetfulness? Because there are a lot of things you can do to actually help improve your memory. Okay. And actually, maybe this question I should just go into how to prevent dementia. So actually, by being active mentally and physically, it helps in dementia, in trying to reduce or slow down dementia progression. So being active mentally, active physically helps. Your diet, a good diet, balanced diet also helps, to slow down dementia, because sometimes if our diet is too fatty, we put ourselves at risk of atherosclerosis, which would then lead to hypertension, which would then lead to stroke, and so very important. In fact, one of the risk factors for dementia is hyper or dyslipidemia. It means that your fat balance is out of sorts. Okay. So try and keep that in control as well. Fruits and vegetables help with the micronutrients, which are also necessary to prevent or to slow down dementia. So just these 3 is good. But of course, if you have the other effects I spoke about, smoking, alcohol, you need to reduce it, because it is known that that can also help slow down progression.
Okay. So Ya is watching from Dakuman, and she's asking, I'm only 24 years, but suddenly I forget things. I'm scared. It could be dementia.
Well, I would say that 24 years is a bit too early for dementia. It could be something else that's going on. And so if it's that significant that you think it's affecting the quality of your life, or it's affecting your performance at work, because obviously that's how you make money to stay in shape, then you need to report to the hospital, and then the appropriate interventions can be started if necessary.
Okay. So here's an interesting one. Annie from Pokwas is asking, does temperament play a role in how critical one's dementia can get? For example, sanguines are naturally forgetful people. Does it mean that as they get older and they get dementia, it could actually be much worse than other people?
Well, definitely. Whatever it and you see, let me turn the question around. The more involved you are with activities, the more relevant you are in discussions or in issues, the more severe your dementia is perceived. Okay. So there's a perception aspect, because if this person was always the go-to person for so and so, then suddenly I go to him and the very thing that he's an expert in he cannot give you any sensible input. Then it impacts you.
The difference is stuck.
Yes, and it's actually said that people who have dementia are not aware of their problem. It's the people around them who are aware of what they are going through. Wow. And so the fact that you are aware that you are forgetful means that you are probably not having dementia. You are not there.
Okay. Yeah, you don't need to worry about it. Okay. And so some of the exercises, like you said, exercise your brain, exercise your body, eat well, and so on. These are things that can help. Yeah, but I think that the aspect of reading is very critical.
Yeah.
I read somewhere in some literature that suggests that you can actually maintain a high level of brain functionality till very, very, very late years if you are an avid reader, if you're an active reader. And they suggested that reading seems to be one of the only things that generates new nerve connections and brain cells.
So let me modify that. Okay. It's not just about reading; it's about learning.
Learning, okay.
As you learn, new connections are being made in the brain and all of those. Okay. The brain is actively engaged, and so it helps you to have a functional brain functionality for much longer. And that's why there's a saying in common parlance: when you stop learning, you start dying. And that's literally what they are talking about. Okay. It's because once you stop learning, then it's like I don't need this. Then the brain starts unfolding all the connections that they've made, and then you start dying literally because you lose yourself. Anybody who has lived with a patient or a person with dementia will tell you that this is not the person I know. This is not the person I remember. And so sometimes people have asked. Somebody has actually asked me in a consulting room, is it worth it to have long life? I can't answer that question, but the point I'm making is that if you're able to do all the preventable things, the prevention things we've spoken about, then statistically you have a higher chance of reducing the incidence or slowing down the progression of dementia. Okay,
really quickly, let's run through a few more questions. So, can dementia lead to madness?
No.
No, good.
In medicine, there's nothing like madness.
Okay. All right, good. I knew dementia to be under psychosis, and that is normally different from delirium. Can you help?
Delirium.
Yes.
The two of them are not the same.
They're not the same.
They're not the same. In fact, they are not even related.
Okay. Okay.
Delirium is, so let's say the most common way to explain delirium, if you've had malaria, very severe malaria, especially as a child, and then you started dreaming and seeing things, weird things all over. In fact, one of the symptoms of severe malaria is terrible nightmares.
Yes.
And so you actually start running around. That's how somebody who is in delirium. You think something is happening, which is not really happening. Okay. It's a terrible.
And usually it's a passing phase.
It's a passing phase.
It's a passing phase. Okay. Does dementia come with menopause? This is Elom in Castle.
So it's known that women tend to have dementia more than men.
Okay.
And one of the theories that has been put forward is that when women hit menopause, the female hormone estrogen is reduced. In fact, it's no longer functioning. And so it has been postulated that could be the reason why they tend to suffer dementia more than men. Okay. Of course, research has been done. It's been difficult to confirm this, but for some reason, women have a higher rate of the dementia than men. However, when it comes to the vascular dementia, which is a specific type of dementia, men have a higher rate because men are more at risk of strokes and hypertension. Yes. And so when it comes to vascular dementia, men are more at risk.
Interesting, interesting. All right, one more here. Sumani Said says, is asking the question, dementia and Alzheimer's, are they the same thing?
Well,
I think you mentioned
it. Alzheimer's is a type of so dementia is the broad term. Under dementia, we have Alzheimer's, and Alzheimer's is the commonest form of dementia. If 60 to 80% of all dementia cases actually have Alzheimer's.
I see.
So it has memory, cognition. That's the broad term. Then that includes memory, thinking, and functioning.
Fantastic, thank you. It's been interesting. It's been exciting.
It has. It's been more engaging than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. So how can people reach you?
Well, I'm on social media. You can find me at Kelvin Owusu MD on all social media channels.
All right, fantastic. We've been speaking with Dr. Kelvin Owusu, helping us to understand dementia and what are some of the things that we can actually do to slow down the process and maybe hopefully never even get it, in our life.